I once watched a couple exchange contracts on a house and move in on a Friday. By the following Tuesday, they had discovered the property was built on a floodplain, had undisclosed subsidence, and sat directly above a Victorian sewer that needed a full replacement. The total repair bill was greater than their entire deposit. Every single one of those problems would have been caught if they had done one thing differently. Today I am going to make sure you never make that same mistake. Welcome back to From Zero to Keys on Marcus Lane Real Estate. I am Marcus Lane, and every single day I upload a brand new episode walking you step by step from the very beginning all the way to the moment those keys land in your hand. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because this is the episode most first-time buyers wish someone had shown them before they signed anything. In episode 8 we walked through the complete mortgage application, the documents you need, and what happens when the lender values your property. Today in episode 9 we are covering the part of the buying process that most people understand the least and where the most expensive surprises are hiding. Surveys, solicitors, and searchers. 3 things that stand between you and a very costly mistake. Let us get into it. Let us start with surveys, because this is where I see first-time buyers make the single most expensive mistake in the entire buying process. When your lender sends a valuer to the property, which we covered in episode 8, that valuation is for the lender, not for you. The valuer is checking whether the property is worth what you are paying. They are not checking whether the roof is about to collapse. They are not checking for damp, subsidence, structural movement, or any of the hidden defects that could cost you tens of thousands of pounds after you move in. That is not their job. Their report is not shared with you. It protects the bank, not the buyer, which is why you need your own independent survey. And I want to be very clear about this. A survey is not optional. A survey is not an unnecessary expense. A survey is the single most important thing you will pay for in this entire process outside of the property itself. The cost of a survey is between £400 and £1,500 depending on the type. The cost of discovering structural problems after you have already completed can be between £10,000 and £100,000. There is no version of this where skipping a survey makes financial sense. Now there are 3 types of survey available to you in the UK, and choosing the right one matters. The first is a condition report. This is the most basic level. It gives you a general overview of the property's condition using a traffic light system: green, amber, red. It highlights obvious issues but does not go into detail. For a brand new build or a very recently renovated property, this may be sufficient. For anything else, I would not rely on it. The second is a homebuyer report. This is the most popular choice for first-time buyers, and for good reason. It goes significantly deeper than a condition report. The surveyor physically inspects the property inside and out, checks for damp, checks the roof, checks the structure, identifies any areas of concern, and gives you a detailed written report with recommendations. For most standard properties built after 1900 in reasonable condition, this is the right choice. It costs between £400 and £800 depending on the property size and location. The third is a full structural survey, also called a building survey. This is the most comprehensive and the most expensive, typically between £600 and £1,500. It covers absolutely everything, every element of the structure, every potential defect, every area of risk. If you are buying an older property, a period property, something that has been significantly extended or altered, or anything that the homebuyer report flags as potentially concerning, get the full structural survey. Do not try to save £300 on a survey for a property you are spending £250,000 on. It is not rational, and here is something most first-time buyers do not know. If your survey comes back with significant issues, you can use those findings to renegotiate the purchase price. Go back to the vendor with the survey report, get quotes for the remedial work, and ask them to either fix the problems before completion or reduce the price accordingly. In my experience, vendors almost always move when faced with a professional survey report. It is not being difficult. It is being a smart buyer. Now let us talk about solicitors. Because the solicitor you choose will either make this process smooth and straightforward or turn it into the most stressful experience of your life. Your solicitor, also called a conveyancer, handles the entire legal side of buying your property. They review the contract, they raise inquiries with the vendor's solicitor, they handle the transfer of funds, and they ensure that on completion day the property legally becomes yours. Here is the most important thing I can tell you about choosing a solicitor. Do not choose purely on price. I have watched buyers choose the cheapest conveyancer they could find online and spend an extra 4 months in the buying process because of slow responses, missed deadlines and basic errors that a good solicitor would never make. The difference between a cheap solicitor and a good solicitor is typically £200 to £400. In the context of buying a property that costs hundreds of thousands of pounds, the difference is completely irrelevant. Choose someone recommended, choose someone responsive, and choose someone who specializes in residential conveyancing. When you instruct your solicitor, they will immediately begin 3 things in parallel: reviewing the draft contract sent by the vendor's solicitor, raising inquiries, which are formal questions about the property, the boundaries, any disputes, any planning permissions, any restrictions on the title, and ordering searches. Which brings us to searches. And this is the part most first-time buyers have never heard of until their solicitor mentions it and sends them an invoice. Searches are official checks carried out by your solicitor with various government and local bodies to uncover anything about the property or the land it sits on that is not immediately visible. They typically cost between £250 and £450 in total, and they are not optional. The 3 main searches are these. The local authority search. This checks the local council's records for planning permissions, building regulations approvals, road schemes, enforcement notices, and whether the property is in a conservation area or listed. This tells you whether any planned development nearby could affect your property and whether any historical work done to the property was done with the correct permissions. The environmental search. This checks whether the property is built on contaminated land, whether it is in a flood risk area, and whether there are any environmental hazards nearby. This is the search that would have saved the couple I told you about at the start of this episode. An environmental search costs around £40. The flood damage it could prevent costs infinitely more. The water and drainage search. This confirms whether the property is connected to mains water and drainage and whether any public sewers run through or near the property. A public sewer running through your garden means the water company has a right of access to that land and you cannot build over it. This matters enormously if you ever plan to extend. Depending on the location, additional searches may be recommended: a coal mining search, a tin mining search in certain parts of Cornwall, a chancel repair liability search in older parishes. Your solicitor will advise you on which additional searches are relevant for your specific property and area. Here is your homework before episode 10 tomorrow. If you have an accepted offer in place right now, book your survey today. Do not wait. Instruct a RICS qualified surveyor. You can find one at rics.org. Decide whether a homebuyer report or full structural survey is right for your property. And if you have not yet instructed a solicitor, do it now. Ask your mortgage broker for a recommendation or ask friends and family who have recently bought in the same area. Because in episode 10, the final episode of this series, we are talking about exchange and completion. The finish line. What happens on the day those keys finally land in your hand, and everything you need to know to make sure nothing goes wrong in the final straight. I am Marcus Lane. This is From Zero to Keys on Marcus Lane Real Estate. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will see you tomorrow for the final episode.